natural gas. I mean, they're just announcing it real calmly like it's some boring stat when this is a huge development. We know this was manufactured. So if it starts killing a bunch of people or the vaccine starts killing a bunch of people, this is an inside job. Now, we don't know. We don't know this is a cover for the federalization and internationalization and the UN directing all the nations of the planet. A big beta test for world government. I mean, the UN admits they're using it for that and say it's a great day for globalization and global governance. But the question is, does it stop there? I don't know. You can't look into the future and tell exactly what's going to happen. I mean, it's bad enough they're making tens of billions off these vaccines. It's bad enough that it has mercury in it and they're admitting it does. It's bad enough that it has the accelerants, the chemicals in it that cause an autoimmune response that are triggering diabetes, brain damage, autism. I had a brain surgeon, top neurologist on for an hour and 45 minutes Friday, Dr. Blaylock, breaking down. I mean, the medical literature, the terms were discovered by him in the last 20 years. I mean, this is like the brainiac that all of the, brain experts and the experts on Alzheimer's being a chronic inflammation of the brain. They know it's MSG. They know it's aspartame. They know it's the mercury in the shots. And they know that once you take enough of this stuff, that's it. You're going to have brain inflammation. I mean, that's why these Alzheimer patients fade in and out. It's the inflammation. But look, and the government's not going to tell you this, folks. They did it to you. It's a chemical weapon, a cocktail of chemical weapons. Regardless, I'm digressing. We know that it's a staged vaccine. We know all the fear-mongering is staged. And then I've got AOL News, AP, swine flu sickens 2,000 at one university alone. Ladies and gentlemen, this came out Friday. More than 2,000 students at Washington State University have come down with swine flu symptoms in just the first week of classes, school officials said Friday. So if this is a foreshadowing of 18,500 students, and you've got more than 1%, 1 out of 10. 2,000 out of 18,500 is more than 1 out of 10, or more than 10%. With it, this is going to be a massive flu season. And we know it's manufactured. That's not debated. Now, what to make of this? I don't know. I mean, we're looking at the pieces, but there's only a few more pieces to put in place here, and it isn't looking good. So let me just go over this for you. This is from Dr. Mercola, Mercola.com. We also have the Health Ranger with their news, natural news, and direct links to the World Health Organization. There's also a detailed report out of global research we got up on Infowars.com right now. WHO admits to releasing pandemic virus into population via mock-up vaccines. The document on the WHO website, link below, states that it is common procedure to release pandemic viruses into the population in order to get a jump ahead of the real pandemic, as so to fast-track the vaccine when it's needed. Now we're going to read this article, read what the UN says, tie this in with all the other areas. Then we're getting into the youth brigade, the president's speech, the psyop there to the kids, 9/11, all the debunking they're going on of 9/11 truth, what's really behind that. Very important radio show lined up today. Richard Gates coming up next hour, and I'm going to foreshadow.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
Thank you for joining us. So if we have over 36,000 Americans die every year from the regular run-of-the-mill flu, out of nowhere comes this engineered super flu. Doesn't have super bad kill rates. It just spreads super fast. And they say it could potentially mutate into the mega death. I mean, if 40 million were killed by the 1918 Spanish flu, different headlines say this could kill hundreds of millions, even billions. I don't know if that's true. All we know is the World Health Organization, just calmly out in the open, admits that governments are releasing flu viruses on purpose. Now, remember what happened in trials in Europe just this year. A whole bunch of homeless people were killed in flu trials, and people have gone to jail for that, but not the pharmaceutical companies that hired city officials to administer it to homeless. In fact, let's just do that for people watching and listening in case they doubt. Just search engine, homeless die in flu trials. And they gave it to 100 at one clinic and 23 died. We'll show you that headline. London Telegraph, BBC, AP, you name it. Now, then Baxter Pharmaceutical mixes weaponized bird flu that has a 90+% kill rate in humans with vaccines. By the grace of God, a vaccine distributor tests it, finds it, when it was still in the larger vaccine preparations, hadn't been put into single-use vials yet. Now, you add that now with all this talk of martial law and the government saying, get ready for martial law and flu's coming and it's going to be this big crisis. And suddenly you have Congressman Brown and Congressman Paul and former Republican leader Dick Armey is in the Dallas Morning News 2 weeks ago saying they may use the flu as a controlled crisis, a staged crisis, to pass health care reform. And then you have this, Bloomberg today. Obama may need sense of crisis to revive health care overhaul. President Barack Obama returns to Washington next week in search of one thing that can revive his health care overhaul, a sense of crisis. And guess what? That sense of crisis could be the flu. Facing polls showing a drop in his approval, diminished support from independents, factors within his own Democratic Party and factions, and a united Republican opposition, Obama must recapture the sense of urgency that led to the passage of the economic rescue package in February, analysts said. And they say, what is that crisis going to be? And then, here's the big news from Mercola.com, naturalnews.com. We have all these stories posted up at Infowars.com right now with direct links to the World Health Organization. That's the United Nations. That's the private corporate holding company that is carrying out the eugenics medical tyranny. Who admits to releasing pandemic virus into population via mock-up vaccines? The document on the WHO website, linked below, states that it is common procedure to release pandemic viruses into the population in order to get a jump ahead of the real pandemic, so as to fast-track the vaccine for when it is needed. In Europe, some manufacturers have conducted advanced studies using so-called mock-up vaccine. Mock-up vaccines contain an active ingredient for an influenza virus that has not circulated recently in human populations and thus mimics the novelty of the pandemic virus. And right before all this broke out in Mexico City, they were doing these inoculation trials. According to the World Health Organization, such advanced studies can greatly expedite regulatory approval, sources said. And I remember having guests on who went to the Norvitis. In fact, it was Dr. Lynn Horowitz was the main one, and went and showed Baxter and a couple other companies. And he mentioned their own patents in 97, 98, 99, where they were talking about releasing simulants. And he went wild on air. He was one of the guests saying these may be simulants already released because their documents said it. Well, now here's the WHO saying it's been done. So there needs to be an investigation. Who did this? Did it cause the deaths? What's in the vaccine? I mean, folks, this is staring you in the face. And I heard a talk show host last night, Kenny Romeyer, I was listening to a show, mention that he was watching one of those, I think it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever, where the person calls in, you have the lifelines, and they ask the people, how many U.S. senators are there? And no one can answer it, and then the person called their lifeline, and they didn't know. In fact, cue up Miss South Carolina for me. Folks, Miss South Carolina is what the general public's like. Listen, you better get as informed about the history of biological weapons and governments releasing them on people. You better get as informed about eugenics and eugenical systems as you are about applying makeup or acting tough or going to the gym or driving a big truck with big tires. I don't care if you wear cowboy hats, have big tires, have tattoos. I don't care. I don't care if you're a yuppie who wears sweaters tied, in a knot around their neck. I don't care. What I care about is that you're experts in all of that, but not experts in the real world. And the host made a good point. I mean, what has become of this country? Most people don't know the three branches of government. Nothing. They don't understand that the Pentagon admits, and Dick Cheney wrote, even the Austin American Statesman decried this, to their credit, in 2001, that he wanted to release race-specific bioweapons. You know what a race-specific bioweapon is? It's more important than your hair falling out. It's more important than the UT Longhorns won last night and what Mac Brown says. And I'm not saying it isn't important to care about Mac Brown and the Longhorns. Fine. You're supposed to have a good time in life sometimes. But you're supposed to also know that foreign banks stole $23.7 trillion and want to fully bankrupt the country and want an excuse to bring in martial law. And they may do it with this flu situation unless we get the word out and warn them.